This is CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg. Massey Hall, the most iconic music venue in Canada. An absolute milestone in the careers of musicians who stand on the historic stage. And you have a front row seat. The Beaches, Charlotte Cardin, William Prince, Jeremy Dutcher, July Talk, and more. CBC Music Live at Massey Hall, now available on CBC Jam.
Thank you, Toronto!
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the
This is CBC News. Good afternoon, I'm Rosanna Hempel in Winnipeg. At 12 o'clock, it's 11 degrees in Winnipeg. Cloudy today with 30% chance of showers, a high of 15. The Crown has wrapped up its arguments in the first-degree murder case against confessed serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky. CBC's Brittany Greenslade has the latest.
Crown attorneys say Jeremy Skibitsky was part of a prison pen pal program, writing letters to a female inmate in Nova Scotia. A Winnipeg Police Service detective sergeant was the Crown's last witness and took the stand Wednesday morning. He says he flew to the Maritimes and seized 9 letters. The inmate said she had destroyed a few others. The letters were written between January and April of 2023 while Skibitsky was being held in Milner Ridge. Prosecutors say the content of the letters speak to Skibitsky's mental capacity at the time. The court has not yet released those letters. A psychiatric assessment of the 37-year-old was completed over the long weekend. Skibitsky has admitted to killing 4 women: Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and an as-yet unidentified woman given the name Mushkade Bishake Ikwe Iban. His legal team says he shouldn't be held criminally responsible due to a mental disorder. The trial is on break until June 3rd, when the defense will lay out its case. They have not said whether Skibitsky will take the stand. Brittany Greenslade, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A university professor who studies protests says it's not unusual to see political statements at graduation, but they often don't make it into valedictory speeches. This comes days after the University of Manitoba Medical School's valedictorian sparked debate over remarks about the war between Israel and Hamas. The valedictorian told fellow grads to demand a ceasefire in Gaza. He also called out medical associations for, quote, deafening silence on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Roberta Lexier is a professor at Mount Royal University in Calgary.
I think we're going to see a lot of this bleed over into those events. I think university administrators are quite concerned about that. I think they shouldn't be. I think this shows their students are learning what they're supposed to be learning about challenging the world and questioning the world that they live in.
Lexier says as long as it doesn't advocate violence, it is considered free speech. But she says that doesn't mean there aren't consequences for what people say. A Montreal neighborhood is in shock after 3 people died in a violent brawl last night. As Lauren McCallum reports, many witnessed the fight and the aftermath.
Mohamed Mobed is still in shock. He watched in horror from his balcony as the brawl degenerated.
And I saw 2 people or bodies lying on the ground.
He says one of the young men was bleeding profusely. A large bloody puddle could still be seen in the parking lot more than 12 hours later, after police left the area. Jose Aquino also witnessed the aftermath from his balcony and saw 2 suspects with weapons. He says one man was brandishing a large metal wrench, the other a large knife that looked like a machete. The 3 homicides occurred just 1 block away from the local police station, a neighborhood that's usually safe, says Kristen O'Sullivan, who lives nearby.
I feel, with the state of the world, and then just like something right in our backyard is shocking and sad.
O'Sullivan and some of her neighbors say more resources are needed to keep young people out of trouble. Lauren McCallum, CBC News, Montreal.
Ireland, Spain, and Norway say they now recognize an independent Palestinian state. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas welcomed the announcement, saying it adds momentum to calls for a 2-state solution.
We hope that the other European countries will follow, because this is the only way to achieve peace and stability in the world.
The state recognition is a diplomatic blow to Israel, which condemned the move. Israel has ordered the immediate return of its ambassadors to the three countries. More than 140 nations in the world recognize Palestinian statehood. Many more seniors are signing up for the Canadian Dental Care Plan. The federal government says 2 million have now been approved. The $13 billion program provides dental insurance to low and middle income Canadians who don't have private plans. Marina von Stackelberg reports.
There are literally tens of thousands of seniors being seen every single week.
Canada's Health Minister Mark Holland says some of those patients waited years for care because they couldn't afford it.
Where else in health will we accept somebody's health getting so poor and so awful that something was preventable, and yet we wait until it's so bad that they wind up in an emergency room?
Holland says most dentists are being reimbursed within 2 days. And despite their early concerns over paperwork, oral health care providers are signing up. The number has doubled since last month, up to 10,000.
In just a couple of weeks, we're at 30% of providers. There's certain areas of the country where we have almost everybody joining.
But more providers will likely need to join to meet the demand. Holland says Ottawa is on track to expand eligibility next month to people who receive the disability tax credit and children under the age of 18. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
London Drugs says it won't be paying a multi-million-dollar ransom to cyber criminals who say they stole data in last month's cyber attack. The company also says stolen corporate files containing employee information could be leaked to the dark web. It says it has notified all staff and is providing credit monitoring and identity theft protection services. London Drugs closed all its Western Canada outlets for 10 days last month after it became aware of the cyber attack. That is the CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local CBC News is at 12:30.
Hello, my friends. Thanks for joining me today for Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Janet Stewart. Our call-in conversation today is about accessible transit. The City of Winnipeg will introduce an app and a website this summer meant to make it easier to book a ride with its Transit Plus service. What else needs to be improved? We'll take your calls after the 12:30 news and weather. We'll hear from a Manitoba conservation officer how the tale of a bear up a tree in a Winnipeg neighborhood ended last night. But Radio Noon begins today with a big reveal that's just happened in the town of Gimli. The town now knows who gave a major donation to get construction of a 7-story assisted living facility off the ground. It is a significant development in Gimli, a $20 million assisted living facility run by the nonprofit Bethel Heritage Foundation. It has been under construction for months. Fundraising has been underway even longer. But just an hour ago, the project's major donors were revealed. Ernest Stephenson and his wife Claire Gillis donated the money needed for a down payment. They used to own Gimli's Viking Pharmacy. I spoke with Ernest Stephenson yesterday.
You know, Bethel is very dear to my heart, and our nonprofit group that cares for the elderly. And I've been involved since 1969 when I opened my pharmacy in Gimli. And I've been on the board literally ever since, and then the Waterfront Center, and now this new assisted living place. So it's a fairly long history, but a wonderful ride.
What kind of difference has the Bethel Home Foundation made to the lives of people in Gimli?
Well, it is actually, it's known as probably one of the best personal care homes in the province. A very, very caring staff. It's a wonderful service for Gimli, and also a wonderful employer. When regionalization came in, all the health facilities were expected to sort of fold into the region, and we didn't. We wanted to retain our independence, and so funding for the personal care home was provided by, under the Canada Health Act, but we had property and we had different assets, including artwork and stuff like that. So we didn't want to just throw away everything. So we formed the Waterfront or the Battle Heritage Foundation and built the Waterfront Center with that. So again, we always wanted an assisted living place, but the finances were just such that being a nonprofit, we didn't have any kind of a huge nest egg of money, and so it took some time. Yeah.
But you did need that deposit, that 10%, to get your mortgage.
That's a standard in most healthcare, both federal and provincial, that the people that want to do the building basically have to come up with 10% capital contribution, and which I agree with. It's called skin in the game. If you're not putting your own money in, then maybe the intent is not that strong.
And where did that deposit, that $2 million, come from in this case?
Well, in this case, it was my wife and I, Claire Yellis and myself, put up the money.
Why did you want to make this gift?
Well, it's something that is just so needed in the community, and we feel very strong about the whole Battle organization. That we're very, very proud to be able to do that.
It's not everyone who's got these resources.
No, it's true. I've been fortunate in I've had a very good life in Gimli, and I've made some very good investments, and so it's time to give back to the community.
When you think of your family's history in the community, how far back do you trace it?
Right to 1875, when the Icelanders came to Gimli. On my mother's side and on my father's side, just shortly after that. Both my grandfather and father were farmers, and when I grew up, it was very humble beginnings, but nevertheless, we did okay. It's just that I was really fortunate when I graduated from university. I was able to come back to Gimli and open my own pharmacy. So that's been a wonderful journey for me.
I'm hearing in your voice, there's just a little bit of emotion there.
You're right.
What is it about this place?
Well, it's literally something that has been part of my whole life here at Gimli. Both my Amma and Ave, which is the Icelandic word for grandparents, were residents of Battle Home. And this is back when we had, it was actually an old hotel that the personal care home was basically started by the Ladies' Aid of the First Lutheran Church in Winnipeg in 1915. And then in 1917, they moved to Gimli because they were able to purchase an old hotel, which is the same site that the current personal care home is. 1972, when the Canada Health Act kicked in for the funding of personal care, so that changed a lot of things. But the Icelandic community totally, funded the original Battle, and as I say, up to 72. It's been a long road, and then also, basically we're fundraising right now as well. Construction these days is pretty expensive when you think, that this is a $20 million project. It's big.
It is big. And what will it be called?
It will be called Stephenson Hus. Hus, of course, the Icelandic word for house.
And how do you feel about that?
I feel wonderful. Very proud.
When do you hope it'll open?
Well, the contractor tells us that they should be pretty much finished towards the end of August. So we're hoping that people will be moving in September.
And what do you know of the need for this, the demand?
Huge. We applied for and received a mortgage from Canada Mortgage and Housing, and of course they made us do all kinds of studies. And one of the need studies that we got, or the one and only one that we got, showed that 33% of the population in our area is 65 plus. 2029, that rises to 36%. So a lot of people use or like to, because we're cottage country, a lot of people have cottages here, and the common thing was to sell their house in Winnipeg and then move out to Gimli. So, and then when these people got to a position where their health needs were getting greater and greater, they literally had to leave Gimli to be able to access those medical facilities in Winnipeg. So we're certainly hoping that we can extend people's stays a lot longer here in this area, in the place that they love.
Thank you for your time, and congratulations.
Thank you very much, Janet.
That's Ernest Stephenson. He and his wife, Claire Gillis, donated $2 million to help with the construction of an assisted living facility in Gimli. It will be called Stephenson House.
Occasionally, an old advertising campaign is brought back, even if it has been off the air for decades. Sometimes it's nostalgic.
I'd like to buy the world a home.
Or a catchphrase that can't be beat.
Tastes great. Less filling.
And sometimes it's just not controversial anymore. Reviving old commercials on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
It is 12:15. I'm Janet Stewart, and you're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, everywhere on the CBC Listen app, and also on CBC Manitoba's YouTube page. Hello to everyone watching there. Remember, you can leave a comment there, or you can call in to join our calling conversation, which begins at 12:30 today, right after the 12:30 news and weather. Today, we're talking about accessible transit. Users say they can be on hold for an hour just trying to book a ride with Winnipeg's Transit Plus. That's the City of Winnipeg's door-to-door transportation service for people with disabilities. There will soon be an app for that, meant to ease frustration and improve service. What else needs to change? Join the call-in conversation in our second half hour. To join the conversation, let us know what you think needs to change. If you have tender perennials, tender flowers, annuals out in your garden, you may want to cover them tonight. The temperature is going to dip very low in the Red River Valley, as low as 2 degrees tonight in Winnipeg. Mainly cloudy day, a few scattered showers, but cover those perennials overnight, or those annuals, I should say. Any tender plants that you've put out, bring them in if you can, just in case you want to protect them. Thursday looks like we'll have a mix of sun and cloud and a 13-degree high temperature. Riley Lachuk joins us after the 12:30 news to give us a full look at the Manitoba forecast. There was a lot of commotion in Winnipeg's Wildwood Park yesterday.
It's a teenager.
Teenager, okay.
Yeah, we get lots of animals around here.
Is that big one?
A little one. It's a teenager. Oh. His mother doesn't take care of him anymore.
A teenager bear, that is, a black bear. That was Radio Canada's Adam Yadui talking to a Manitoba conservation officer in Winnipeg about a black bear sighting in Winnipeg's Wildwood neighborhood. The bear had climbed a tree, very high up in that tree. Adam had a chance to speak with one of the officers about what they do about that angsty teen.
So my name's Graham Smith. I'm a staff sergeant with the Conservation Officer Service in Winnipeg.
It's what's happening here.
Okay, so what we have here today is early this morning we started getting reports around South Drive that there's a bear in the area. So very uncommon for a bear to be in this area, but we followed up on some additional reports and confirmed it, and now we have a bear in the tree behind us here. Yeah. So our initial plan here is to immobilize the bear or tranquilize it, put it to sleep, and haul it away to a better area. So generally we would be relocated to somewhere around the White Shell or north of Pine Falls, something like that. Of course, this bear, so our method of dealing with that is we want to tree the bear. So we need the bear to go up a tree so it's safe for us to immobilize it. And of course the bear picked the largest tree in the neighborhood. So once we were set up with fire and police, the bear decided to go a little higher. So our initial plan was to have fire here to assist us in catching the bear if it were to come out of the tree. But with the position of the hydro lines here and the tree itself, it wasn't possible. And the bear continued to climb higher. So in the interest of the safety of the bear itself, we're kind of pulling back everything right now, and we're just going to wait until kind of everyone's in for the night and it gets darker, and then we'll let the bear come down and try again.
So the plan is?
The plan for now is to wait it out, and we've had this a number of times in the past in other areas of the city, and the bears often find their own way out. They found its way in here without being detected until it was here, so they often find their way out, but we may have to help it along. Obviously, like the public is here, there is no threat to the public right now. We are here. The bear is treed. It's not going to come down unless we let it down. It's a defensive mechanism that they have. So there's no danger to anyone here.
That was Radio Canada's Adam Yadui speaking with Graham Smith, a staff sergeant with the Manitoba Conservation Office in Winnipeg, about a bear up a tree in a Winnipeg neighborhood. Beautiful photos of it on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. The province said around 11 p.m. that wayward bear moved low enough from its perch in the tree for officers to tranquilize the bear and safely remove it. They then relocated it outside of the city. Now, sadly, another black bear spotted near people wasn't so lucky. RCMP say they had to put down a bear in Steinbach on Monday. It was seen near the Steinbach Regional Secondary School. Remember, Monday would have been a school holiday, but still people saw it there. RCMP were able to escort. At first, they thought they would be able to escort it out of town, I should say. But police say that due to the bear's behavior and the fact that there were lots of people around, they had to put the bear down. Let's listen to some music now. New music from Manitoba's Jade Turner. Here's a song called That Wind.
They'll grab at anything to bring you down. My daddy said, girl, you better answer when that wind comes at your mind. Listen to whatever it tells you. It's your time to light the flame. Hold your head up high. It's time to fly. It's time to fly.
Manitoba's Jade Turner with That Wind.
Narrative, lyric, heroic, romantic, verse, or prose. The 2024 CBC Poetry Prize is on. Send in your best unpublished poem or poetry collection. Up for grabs, cash prizes from the Canada Council for the Arts, a 2-week writing residency at the Banff Centre for Arts and Creativity, and your work published on CBC Books. Contest closes June 1st. For rules and more, go to cbcbooks.ca.
It is 12:25. I'm Janet Stewart, and you are listening to Radio Noon. Researchers at Western University's Schulich School of Medicine believe they've found a potential cure for ALS. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis is a deadly degenerative disease. It often takes someone's life 3 to 5 years after diagnosis. It used to be known as Lou Gehrig's disease after a famous baseball player. Dr. Michael Strong holds the Arthur H. Hudson Chair in ALS Research at Western University. He explains their groundbreaking discovery.
Traditionally, when we think about degenerative diseases that occur with aging, we think about Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. I would add Lou Gehrig's disease, or ALS, as it's also known, as being part of that top 3. So these are illnesses that tend to occur as you age. So for ALS, on average, we see people starting somewhere around their 5th, 6th decades of life, although we're starting to see it in older age groups now. The second thing is that it's a fundamental problem with how the nerves to the muscles are working. And so these nerves take their origin in the spinal cord or in the brain, and then they work their way out to get to the individual muscles. And for whatever reason, these nerves are dying off. And so the muscle doesn't function. It becomes wasted. It becomes weak. And the unfortunate thing with the disease is that this just continues relentlessly over the course of 3 to 5 years. And eventually the individual, the patient who has this will die, largely because the diaphragm is a muscle and will fail because of this. So, one of the fundamental changes in our understanding of ALS occurred almost 15 to 20 years ago when it was shown that within those nerves that are dying, so if we were able to, and we do after somebody's passed away, look in the spinal cord and look at the motor neurons. So these are the neurons that go out to the muscles. And for those that are left behind, that haven't died and disappeared, we see these aggregates of material, and think of them like a train wreck. Within the cell, these are proteins that are normal. They should be in doing their function in there. But for whatever reason, they've formed these rocks or aggregates or these train wrecks sitting within the cells themselves. And the identity of the principal player in that was discovered almost 20 years ago now. And what we've discovered is that protein from 20 years ago has a partner or another one within the same family, which seems to be able to offset the toxicities of the first protein, the one from 20 years ago, being deposited where it isn't supposed to be. And so that's what our experimental models have been able to demonstrate, is that we've been able to still have the train wreck sitting there, but when we bring this other protein in, the cells seem to tolerate it. And so this opens a pathway for us that hasn't existed before. So right now, we're really hoping for a slowdown of the progression and the ability to at least, get to the point where progression isn't going to occur, which is a really, really unusual to have a conversation of this in the field of ALS. But about 3 to 5 years ago, we started to see the use in a very rare variants of ALS that are genetically inherited, and even with that genetic group, which is 5 to 8% of all cases, less than 1% of those cases have really rare mutations, but that can now actually be stopped using other genetic tools. And what we're learning from those is that if you can be really specific in your target, you can actually get the disease to arrest. And In rare examples, we're starting to see improvement. So it's given hope to all of us as researchers and to my patients that if we get this right, that the first thing is, can we slow this thing down? And then let's see what happens after that.
Dr. Michael Strong holds the Arthur J. Hudson Chair in ALS Research at the Schulich School of Medicine at Western University. The protein he and his lab team have isolated is also present in some forms of dementia. So wouldn't it be wonderful if it could help with treatments there as well? And now it is 30 seconds from the start of our call. And what do you say? Do we open the phone lines early? I think we should. Today we're talking about accessible transit. What would you like to change in the way Transit Plus works, or the transit system for people with disabilities wherever you live? Give us a call. The phone lines are open now, 204-780-0893. Out of town, 1-800-268-5483. The time now is 12:30.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon. I'm Rosanna Hempel in Winnipeg. At 12:30, it's 13 degrees in Winnipeg. Cloudy today, 30% chance of showers, a high of 15. Crown prosecutors have finished calling evidence in the trial of a Winnipeg man who has admitted to killing 4 Indigenous women. The Crown presented 9 letters between Jeremy Skibitsky and an inmate in Nova Scotia, but their content was not read in court. The trial is to resume June 3rd. Defense lawyers are expected to call an expert to testify about Skibitsky's state of mind at the time of the killings. He's pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder in the 2022 slayings. His lawyers say he killed the women, but they argue he should not be found criminally responsible due to mental illness. A university professor says protests at convocation is not that unusual, but it is unusual for it to be part of a valedictorian speech. This comes days following a controversial address by a University of Manitoba med school graduate. He called on fellow grads to speak out on the war between Israel and Hamas, and medical associations for deafening silence on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. That has been criticized as divisive by U of M administration. Roberta Lexier is a professor at Mount Royal University in Calgary.
We often see people, for instance, walking out on a controversial speaker. We see students refusing to shake hands with the president or the dean or whoever is giving them their diploma in protest. We've seen students wear certain clothing and other sorts of protests.
Lexier says as long as what the person says doesn't advocate violence, they are free to say what they wish. The UK Prime Minister has called a general election for July 4th. Rishi Sunak has been on the job since 2022. Sunak says he's proud of the Tories' economic achievements and wasted no time starting his campaign.
I'm guided by doing what is right for our country, not what is easy. I can't say the same thing for the Labour Party, because I don't know what they offer. And that's because they have no plan.
Opposition leader Keir Starmer criticised what he calls the chaos and decline of the UK since the Tories came to power 14 years ago. Mattel is issuing a new line of Barbies ahead of the upcoming Paris Olympics, and a Canadian is among the former athletes being honoured.
It'll come to Sinclair, who shoots and scores!
Christine Sinclair, Canada's greatest soccer player, now has her own Barbie. Mattel says the new line celebrates the impact of sport in fostering self-confidence. That is the CBC News from Winnipeg.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Riley Lachuk joins us now with a look at our weather forecast. I was warning people earlier that if they had tender plants out, if they got all excited about May long weekend and went out and put out all these beautiful, expensive annuals or whatever, they may want to cover them.
Yeah, which we'll talk about tonight on the TV show, a little more in depth on what to do if you've done that, because we do have a risk of frost across parts of the province as we head into the overnight hour tonight, more so east and north of the city, but we could see some temperatures pretty close to the freezing mark here in the city as well. So right now we're at 13 degrees in both Winnipeg and Steinbach. Brandon is at 17 this hour, and then we're single digits north of there. So Gimli, Victoria Beach, Dauphin, all at 9 degrees, 1 in Thompson right now, and Churchill is sitting at -1. And we are looking at A little bit of cloud cover still hanging around in the city. Some clearing back to the west, though, as we get through places like Brandon, through the Portage La Prairie region, and a little bit more in the way of rain moving through sort of the east side of Lake Winnipeg into northwestern Ontario, which is where we do have that rainfall warning still in place for parts of northwestern Ontario into, say, like Kenora, Dryden, Fort Francis. Could see up to 50 millimeters of rain by the time we get to the evening hours tonight. So looking at some of that forecast rainfall, we are looking at another maybe 10 millimeters through southeastern Manitoba into northwestern Ontario by the time we get to Friday morning. But we are looking at the potential, at least, for a few snowflakes even through the early morning hours for the northeastern part of the province, through the Island Lake region, for example, into Shamattawa. Here in Winnipeg, we do clear out a bit as we get into the afternoon hours today. By the time we get to first thing Thursday morning, we look at mainly sunny sky in Winnipeg, maybe a few scattered showers still through the overnight hours tonight. But then we get another shot of rain as we head into Friday morning with another system that will move through. Could bring us some heavier pockets of rain Friday into the early part of Saturday. Saturday starts a bit rainy, but we do get to see a little bit more sunshine by the time we get to the day on Saturday and into the day on Sunday. So we're looking at lows tonight in Winnipeg at about 2 degrees, cooler to the north. So places like, say, Gillam, Shamattawa dipping below the freezing mark, even into the Interlake region could dip below the freezing mark tonight. Up to 13 degrees tomorrow. Periods of rain for Friday, 10 degrees. Saturday and Sunday, 13 and 17. And a slim chance of more showers next Monday and 19.
Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
I was trying to think of how do I complain about all the rain.
Yeah.
I know we've needed rain for so long,
Yes.
but now even the farmers are probably saying,
It's wet in parts of the province.
it's getting wet and
getting a
muddy
bit wet,
now.
yeah.
Could we? And I know campers who might like
Yes.
a little bit more sunshine. But
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Riley is just the messenger, but he does keep us well informed. He does so here on Radio Noon, also on Up to Speed, the program that airs between 3 and 6 p.m. here on CBC Radio 1 every weekday, and also on the television newscast because, we like to keep them very, very busy. That starts tonight at 6 on TV and on CBC Manitoba's YouTube channel. Okay, today we're going to talk about accessible transit, which if you've been listening to Radio Noon, it's something I've been wanting to talk about for the last couple of weeks, ever since I met with a few people who use it, and they complained about how long it takes to book a ride with accessible transit. The City of Winnipeg's Transit Plus system. Well, just yesterday, a news release came into my email box saying the City of Winnipeg is providing a new app and website for Transit Plus users. It'll start this summer in July. It should let people who use this door-to-door transportation service book a ride online. So how big a difference could that app make to your life? What other things need to improve when it comes to the accessibility of transit? The number to call is 204-780-0893. Brandon, Thompson, and Steinbach are rethinking how they can offer transit services. So if you live in a community other than Winnipeg, we want to hear from you too today. What would accessible transit mean to you and your life? How do you get around now? The number to call toll-free is 1-800-268-5483. Now, we have, I know Jenny Kowalson was trying to get in touch with us. Do we have Jenny Kowalson on the line, Wendy? Okay, great. On line one, forgive me for reaching out behind the curtain there and revealing things. Jenny Kowalson is an educational assistant in Elmwood High School in Winnipeg. She uses a wheelchair. Hi, Jenny. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Janet. Thanks for having me.
What would you like to see improved when it comes to accessible transit?
First, honestly, I'd like to see more vehicles available because there is a higher demand that the vehicles just can't seem to be able to meet.
How often do you have to wait, and how long usually?
Usually to book a trip, I'm on the phone for the most has been like 3 hours. But usually it's about an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Just to book?
Just to book a trip, and then for them to schedule it takes about another 40 minutes. I can be on the phone total for almost 3 hours a few times a week.
So what do you think of the news that the city is going to introduce an app and a web page for booking trips?
I think it's about time. I think if it's done properly, it could be really helpful, because we have the same thing for taxis already. So I think they can implement the same systems. I think it can help a lot of people.
We heard from a Transit Plus user named Dorian Phillips, who mentioned she'd like to see the 30-minute window for waiting for a ride shortened. Is that what you find too, that you often have to wait, even if you've got the trip booked, it can take 30 minutes to get there?
Oh, yeah, 30 minutes plus some days. I've been waiting at work to go home, and my pickups between, let's say, 3:45 and 4:15. There've been days I've been waiting at work till almost 4:45 for them to come and get me.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about accessible transit and how it should change?
Like Dorian, I'd like to see the window change, and also for the drivers to be more aware of how they treat people with disabilities and their mobility equipment. I've had to make several complaints for my equipment being mishandled on Winnipeg Transit Plus.
Well, and I know that wheelchairs, for example, certainly power wheelchairs are very, very, expensive to fix. You don't want stuff messed with.
Yes, wheelchairs. I've had them almost break my walkers at times because they're securing it wrong, and then they get mad at me when I try and suggest to them how what a better way is as the person that the mobility aid belongs to, and then they get mad at me saying I'm being uncooperative. So having more training.
Training is a good idea. Jenny Kowalson, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem.
We have two special guests with us in the studio today as well. David Cron is Executive Director of the Cerebral Palsy Association of Manitoba. Thanks for being here, David.
Thanks, Janet.
And I should say David Crone. I always say your last name incorrectly. Okay. I apologize. And also Kyle Mason is with us. He's the Executive Director of CNIB Manitoba. You were nodding your head as Jenny was talking about some of the issues with booking and having to wait. What have you been hearing from your clients?
Well, our participants, I would echo much of what the caller was saying. We hear time and time again the drivers can be rude and rushed, and when it comes to some of our participants with guide dogs, they're not happy if a guide dog has to go with their person, obviously. But it's everything that she said we would echo. Like long wait times for pickups, long wait times to book. It's a system that obviously needs a lot of attention, and this app and these new ways of booking is a right step forward, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Call now if you'd like to join this conversation. Our number is 204-780-0893. We'd love to hear from you. 204-780-0893. If you need a toll-free number because you live outside of Winnipeg, we want to hear from you too. 1-800-268-5483. Now we have Brenda joining us. Hi, Brenda. Thanks for calling Radio Noon.
Hi. Thank you, Janet. Okay, my complaint is, now I'm not in a wheelchair. I can walk, on, like in the taxi or like, my complaint, is, and I've asked Transit Plus if I can just be sent, like the taxi, the car, because the buses and the vans are not properly equipped for people sitting in those seats. There's like a square flat bottom and a flat back, and it's there's a seat belt, but there's really nothing around you like there would be in a car. And if the driver happens to be a terrible driver, which I've encountered, like I'm all over the place. I sway from front, or side to side. I have a bad back. I have a neurological condition, and I have a bad back besides. Now, I contacted the OT department.
Occupational therapy?
Yeah, occupational therapy at Transit Plus, and I requested to have like cars only, and they can do that. And I stated the reasons why. I got a call back from an OT, And she said, "We don't fulfill this request for comfort care." I could not believe that she said that.
For comfort care.
Yes, that's exactly what she said. And I said, "Look, I have just explained to you that I have, like a chronic back issues and a neurological condition. And you were saying this to me? I don't believe, I believe what she said, but it was like, I don't know, crass and,
it felt like she didn't understand.
Yeah. Oh, well, it felt like, she didn't understand, but it felt like she didn't believe what I was saying. And I can't think of the word for it. It was more than she didn't understand. She didn't ask for clarification, and what she said to me was way out of line. Yeah.
Brenda, thank you for calling us.
You're
I'm
welcome.
sorry for your experience.
Well,
David,
yeah, and I think it has to. Okay.
No, go ahead, Brenda. We can still hear you.
Yeah, I think it has to change to. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much. So David Crone from the Cerebral Palsy Association in Manitoba, we've heard a few callers now making comments about the training of our drivers, that they're just not treated with respect.
Well, that's always been the issue. Like with Brenda's thing, those buses, you bounce around in the back of them. They're built for, lots of wheelchairs. It depends on how they schedule the drivers, right? If the driver's been rushed all day and doesn't have a chance to have lunch or a pee break or anything like that, again, they feel that pressure there. So just like what Jenny was saying, there needs to be more resources for the system. An app and the ability to actually contact them in a timely manner is helpful. I know I was on their advisory committee back in 2019, and they were talking about doing this, and it's now 2024, right? So it's a good step, but there needs to be more to it.
Axel joins us now. Thank you for calling Radio Noon, Axel. What would you like to say?
Well, I'm disabled my whole life, and I got on an actual public transit bus, and was going to my eye appointment at the Misericordia, and a stroller came on, and then another stroller came on. I was in the disability seat, and I was asked to move and had to move out of the disability seat. The people at transit took no accountability. They never called me back, so they're irresponsible about down at public transit as far as I'm concerned, and my cries fell on deaf ears down there. Excuse the pun.
Is that... you have an invisible disability?
I had my cane out. My cane was out. I tapped it on the floor, and the bus driver seen my Canadian National Institute for the Blind card.
Right.
So my seat, I was asked to move out of that seat. A stroller trumped my disability, and people at Transit Authority, they didn't call me back. I called them back. They said the issue was resolved. I asked what the decision was, and they wouldn't tell me.
Kyle Mason, as you may have heard, Axel, is with us now from the CNIB. Kyle, what do you think Axel should do in this case?
Well, he could definitely reach out to our office. So we have staff that are there to advocate on behalf of people. But this is sadly not an isolated incident where there's a lot of things that have not been thought through when it comes to the public transits, when it comes to people with who are blind or have low vision, because there's a number of different things that have to be addressed. Like even before you get on the bus, depending on the weather, is the stop snow covered? Is it icy? Is there crumbling concrete? Are the bus shelters clean? Are they not smelling of urine or other things like that? Also, people have to be conscious of like what bus is pulling up. There's some routes that have multiple buses coming rapidly, and the buses don't always announce what route they are. And if they ask the driver if the doors pulls up, sometimes the drivers share what route they are. Sometimes they're too busy. Sometimes they may not hear. Sometimes they're rude, and of course, sometimes they get a good response. But it's a mixed bag. But even when they do get onto the bus, we hear often that bus drivers don't wait an appropriate amount of time for our participants to find their seat
And to get settled safely before things move.
I understand bus have tight timelines, but they should wait just a little bit to make sure that people are safely seated. And then, there needs to be different ways to find, to accommodate strollers and people who have different needs.
Axel, are you still with us?
Yeah.
Did you manage to get a seat, or did you have to stand?
Well, I had to move to the back of the bus like a lady back in the 60s or 50s there. So I just don't understand why a stroller trumps my disability, and that seat's clearly marked disabled.
Axel, thank you very much for calling in.
Thank you.
David Crone, what do you think needs to be done in terms of understanding the true needs, how to truly make transit system accessible, like drivers not stepping on it?
It really comes down to resources. If you have enough buses, whether they're handy transit buses or regular buses, if there's one every 5 minutes, there's room for you, whether it's a stroller or whatever. It shouldn't be the Hunger Games at the front of the bus looking for a seat. And just like was previous mentioned, like all the stuff that has to go along with it, like the bus stops have to be clear. The driver has to, we have to give the bus drivers time to do the accommodation, right? And I don't think that the scheduling department in transit really takes that into place.
In that case, with so many strollers, all the spaces needed for strollers, perhaps the bus driver, it would have been lovely if one of the able-bodied people also seated near had stood up and said, "Axel, take my seat." Well, here, sir.
And that's it. Now, there is some clear documentation or, signage on buses now. But again, it comes down to an awareness. It comes down to just a little common sense and a common courtesy. I think it really is. But it also comes down to, the other thing I've heard is when the bus is full and somebody's sitting there, let's say using a chair, the bus just drives by, right? Because they're full. And it happens. And if it's 30 below, there has to be a system in Saskatchewan, in Regina. They have a system where the driver can call a handy transit. They say, "Hey, my bus is full. I've got a person at stop whatever." And they dispatch a handy transit unit to follow up with that bus to get them to their next stop. So there are ways to do it. It just comes down to resources.
We also, I mentioned that I got messages from Dorian Phillips, who uses Transit Plus in Winnipeg. One of her issues has to do with awareness as well. The common courtesy and the awareness of the other people in the bus, for example, understand that extra uncontrollable movements, she said, can be startling, that it just happens and it can't be avoided. And awareness that people who have a hard time speaking, or maybe their speech is hard to understand, doesn't mean that they can't hear you, and they may understand everything that's being said around them. I take that to mean that Dorian's experienced some people being rude and saying things that they wouldn't if they understood that she was fully aware of what they were saying.
I know Dorian very well. She's a longtime member of the association, and she uses a device to speak for her, and I'm hoping this new system has something where she could text or email her trip request. I'm hoping that the new app has all accessibility features, because up to this point, Dorian's had to get somebody to call for her when there's a problem, whether it's booking or whether the vehicle doesn't show up.
Now, what about accessibility for people who are visually impaired, Kyle? How is that nowadays with apps? Is everything voice activated?
There certainly have been improvements when it comes to smartphones and other different types of technology, but there's still a lot of different things to consider. Our society is still focused and centered around people with sight. So people who are blind or have low vision or who are deaf-blind still have to find workarounds, and there's still a lot of obstacles to overcome.
So we've only got a few minutes left with you both. What is the main message that you would have, David Crone, for people who plan accessibility for transit?
Well, it comes down to consistency, training, and resources. If you have all those three things, I think you'll have a much better system.
Yeah, and I would agree with those things too, but also being courteous and thoughtful. Our society, everybody should feel welcomed and appreciated and fully included. And just sometimes it just takes an extra second or two to be considerate of people who have different needs.
And where does that knowledge and awareness come from?
Well, it should come from the home, but the fact is that anybody has the ability to take half a second to be thoughtful and to be considerate. But when it comes to the infrastructure and to the different systems, it does require different levels of government to make sure that all these different systems are sufficient and are able to meet the demand.
And also we heard from people who say that they complained but didn't hear anything back.
And I've put complaints in to Transit Plus and never heard back. So their customer service needs to be improved.
Yeah, I can also suggest that, when it comes to people who have a blind or low vision, they can contact our office. We'd be happy to help. But also, if anybody of any different needs or abilities, they can also reach out to their city councillors and find a way to connect with them that way.
Kyle Mason is Executive Director of CNIB Manitoba, and David Crone is Executive Director of the Cerebral Palsy Association of Manitoba. Thank you both for joining us today. To comment on what you've heard here today and keep this conversation going, remember you can leave a message anytime at 204-788-3797. Faith Fundal joins us now. What's coming up on Up to Speed today?
Janet, a Canadian economist and author, is back in Winnipeg to talk more about his book. Jeff Rubin joins us on the show just after the 4:30 local news for more on a map of the new normal, how inflation, war, and sanctions will change your world forever.
Oh dear.
It's a long title. But there is some really good tidbits here that I think many folks will care very much about.
Well, and certainly economics-based. That's something that we've all been concerned about lately, with the rising cost of everything. Faith Fundal, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Faith's hosts Up to Speed here on CBC Radio 1. It airs between 3 and 6 p.m. on your CBC Listen app as well and your CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being with us today. Do remember you can contact us with anything, comments about what you hear. We love to hear from you. If you've got an idea for a call-in show, let us know, 204-788-3797. Tomorrow on our Radio Noon call-in conversation, we're going to be talking about boating safety. Manitoba apparently exceeds the average, and not in a good way, when it comes to boating injuries. How can we change that? Our question for you, it is boating season. How safe do you feel on Manitoba's lakes and waterways? You can leave a message anytime at 204-788-3797, and we'll open the phone lines live tomorrow at 12:30. Thank you to everyone who helped put this program together today. Thanks to Travis Peterson, to Daniel Friesen, who's our technician, our studio technician today, studio director Wendy Parker. Thanks to Leif Larson and Nellie Gonzalez for their input. And thank you, most of all, for listening and contributing. This is CBC Radio 1. I'm Janet Stewart, and I'll chat with you tomorrow. Coming up next, Writers and Company. Have a great day.